Sharia, why don't you start with just, well, let me just introduce you to everyone here, So you're a lawyer. Why don't you tell us who you are? You're a lawyer and you're running for county chair. Take your
Sure. Sure. I'm sad Vicky's not here. She had this amazing introduction she just sent to me.
She's going to be here. She's going to be here and she'll do it. We'll start this over.
We have somebody who can't hear anything. Are other people able to hear? Hopefully everyone's okay. If somebody could try to talk to her if her microphone or her speaker is not on, I'm not sure. But let me just jump right in. So I'll jump in, and if Vicki wants to say something later, that's fine. First of all, thank you everyone for showing up. I'm super excited to have the Parkrose community and some other folks here this evening on a Friday night. I know you're busy, so I'll try to cut to the chase. About me, I am an employment rights attorney. I work on cases relating to discrimination, harassment, and retaliation in the workplace, race, religion, workers' comp, disability, medical leave. Probably you guys have encountered workplace misconduct at some point in your life. And so that's really my passion. I also teach privacy law at Willamette Law School, where I've been teaching, I think 5 times already. And now I'm going into my 6th term this year, which I love, really teaching people about digital rights and their online privacy rights. Now, why am I running? I'll just do the very short version, but you will find out very shortly when I answer questions why I'm running. But I'm running because I'm fed up. Like many of you, like many of the regular constituents in this area, I was born in Portland. I consider this place my home. I love Oregon, but I am very disillusioned with the current state of affairs, the lack of leadership, particularly around livability issues, the massive amounts of garbage, the exploding homelessness crisis, the drug addiction, the mental health crisis is not being addressed with the critical urgency that it deserves and that it needs. We've been in a homeless emergency, actual declared emergency, for over 6 years now, and yet our response to that has been languishing under the current leadership. And so the people running against me, just for a quick little overview, 3 of them, they are current county commissioners. Now, some of you might say, what the heck is a commissioner? And we will dive into government governance later on in this town hall. But I want to give you an overview to everyone new to politics or just kind of poking their head in here and not knowing what's going on. Don't worry, I'm a lawyer, and even it's confusing to me. So basically, the county commissioners are like a board of 5, I'll call them senators. This is the easiest way to describe it, like 5 senators. And they pass policy to expend the budget, billions of dollars of budget. $2.5 to $3 billion is being spent at the county level based on a 3-person majority vote out of the 5 commissioners. The commissioner position is 4 years long, and currently the chair of the commission, Chair Kafori, is retiring because she had 2 terms, and quite frankly, I don't think she did a very good job, as you guys can see. And that opens up a seat. Out of the 4 remaining commissioners, 3 of them are running against me. And I say, you have not shown the level of leadership and critical urgent action to pass policy. Even the 3 of you could have passed policy. You create a majority alone. The 3 people running could have passed policy. And they're, in my opinion, they're not committed to the short-term immediate action we need to clean up the streets, to get people into treatment, to focus on rehabilitation. And instead, they have been focusing essentially all of their energy, in my opinion, with the exception of Sharon, who I'll talk about her later. She has tried a little bit to do short-term solutions, but largely on long-term solutions. And there's nothing wrong with long-term solutions. We need that. We need affordable housing, but the housing first absolutist model is infeasible, massively expensive, and does not treat drug addiction and mental health issues, which are the root cause of a lot of the problems we're seeing around here, with the majority of people on the streets having substance abuse disorder issues. And I do have experience with civil commitment, mental health, prison work, criminal defense. I've been on both sides of prison. I've done juvenile dependency. I've done trial work. I've done appellate work. I have a record of government involvement at federal, state, and county level to deal with these issues. And I don't feel even my voice has been heard by local leadership. When I tell them, hey, there's a problem, and I've done construction law, you're not dealing with this problem properly. I don't feel like leadership is listening. So I want to get into leadership, and I want to start changing our direction away from this housing first absolutism into real, concrete, fast solutions. So that's where I'm coming from, primarily focused on livability issues.
And Vicki, I see, just joined us, so that'll be good.
Oh, okay. Hi, Vicky. Oh, you're
Vicky.
muted.
Hi.
So
Oh,
I just introduced myself, which
Thank
is
you.
fine, but if you wanted to kind of weigh in at all as just a regular neighbor, most of the people on here didn't know me before I ran. So this is just all grassroots people who have met me online through the in-person event that we had before. And so feel free to kind of chime in, but they know a little bit about who I am because I just gave an intro.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just say quickly that I got a chance to meet Sharia 2 weeks ago. I wasn't really familiar with her, like she said, grassroots stuff. So we were kind of focusing on the county chairs that we knew that were running, and we're kind of looking at supporting Sharon Myron because she seems to be the only person on council who advocates for temporary measures and will say words like drugs, meth, etc. But then Sharia, introduce yourself, let us know she's a kind of in the same vein. And actually, kind of pointed out that Dr. Mirren has had 6 years and has not been able to rally any support on the county level. So that's why nothing's been done. So we actually think now, after listening to her talk, and she'll get to talk to us some more about her ideas, that it would actually be better to keep Sharon Mirren in her spot so that she has somebody to vote alongside her. And, because otherwise this goes to a district vote to backfill one of the commissioners, that if another commissioner wins, and we have no idea who would backfill Sharon Myron. So we want to support Sharia and have somebody on the council, that at least one person already, that's not going to be too tough for her to work with to get things passed. Because obviously, just because if she won the chair doesn't mean she gets to do whatever she wants. You have to rally support behind that.
okay, so if I may, I'd like to back out of the weeds a little bit in terms of talking about how the commission works and who's running and whatnot, and get back to sort of the larger questions, right? And we'll get to the, Ricky will ask the questions that we put together, but I really like to start with, for everyone's edification, Sharia, what is the county? Tell me about the county versus the city of Portland.
Great question. I will try my best to answer the questions. If you'd like, I could go through the list, or do you just want to kind of ask them yourself, or?
We'll go through the questions, but I mean, just generally, just overview,
Yeah, so the
what's
county,
county?
sure, the county comprises many different agencies, groups, but in terms of the government, which we're going to focus on here because we're talking about government, it can kind of be summarized as follows. There are different kind of departments headed independently by elected officials under the county. So that would be the Board of Commissioners, which are elected, 5 of them. I just mentioned those. They're in their own category. They expend the budget, which is passed by the auditor. The auditor's office is its own office, separate from the Board of Commissioners, under the county as well, independently headed, and creates the budget. The budget then goes to the Board of Commissioners, who are like the Senate, and then they decide kind of how to spend it, and by a 3-person vote, which is a majority. There's also the district attorney's office under the county level, Multnomah County district attorneys. There's Washington County district attorneys. Each county has their district attorney's office. They're a separate office. Obviously, you know what they deal with. They prosecute crimes. Well, not always, but they should be prosecuting the crimes. And then the sheriff's office, who also does law enforcement related stuff. The sheriff has the ability, for example, to declare a riot, and that implies that certain law enforcement activities can then be used. Obviously, kind of working with local law enforcement, working with PPB, which brings me to the next point of what about the city? At the city side, you have the city of Portland, you have council members there, also elected officers. And normally what's happening between the city and the county is some sort of, and even within the county, is collaboration. So you have joint offices, for example, between county and city. So let's think of city of Portland, for example, which is a huge city, versus the county. We know that Multnomah County is not just Portland. It includes Gresham, it includes Portland, it includes Troutdale, it includes Wood Village, Fairview, right? Different cities are all part of it. So Portland is the biggest city within Multnomah County. And one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is homelessness. So the Joint Office of Homeless Services brings together the county, which is largely the commissioners, and the city to come together and try to pass policy because homelessness affects the entire region. So just for summary, I'm going to do this one more time. County consists of board of commissioners, like senators, the auditor, separate, the sheriff, separate, the DA's office, separate, Portland City council members on the side, also separate, but everyone can work together. So that's sort of its own thing. And I don't know if anybody asked about Metro's coming up. I guess we could kind of talk about that separately, but Metro is its own thing. So we'll put that on the side for a second.
Man, that's kind of complicated, isn't it?
It's very complicated. Don't worry if this sounds like what the heck is going on, because it really is what the heck is going on. Even for the people that are elected officers, even for lawyers who have worked in federal, state, county level work, I look at this and I think this is a cluster. By the way, this is not the normal structure that most city and county structures have. This is a unique one here in this region. So just keep in mind, it's a little bit more complicated than normal. But the real gist of it is really the county commissioners, in my opinion, and the council members at the city level are really in the position of expending money and deciding how to spend the budget. They don't set the budget, they spend it. So they really have what we call the power of the purse under the law. Yeah, the commissioners have the power of the purse. And if there's anything you need to remember, it's probably that.
Well, isn't that almost the most important thing, right?
Oh yeah, you guys probably know this. The power of the purse is very powerful, very powerful power.
Yeah. Well, listen, let me, Vicky, do you want to start going through the questions, and then we'll start to understand more as we go.
Sure.
Go
Let's do
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you kind of went into this a little bit, but so you already kind of talked about how the county relates to the city. So maybe you could dive in a little bit more specifically. How has our current chair, Deborah Kafori, been able to hold up funding for things like temporary housing solutions?
Yes. So here's the thing about the chair. The chair is just like all the other senators, except they're kind of the Speaker of the House or the Speaker of the Senate, essentially. So they kind of lead the direction. They set the tone. They are looked up to as somebody who's kind of guiding the commission into the right direction. Now, Chair Kafori, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions, has not risen to the occasion and has really thwarted progress in the way of dealing with the homeless crisis, the homeless emergency, actually, to be more exact. And at one point, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the quote in front of me, she said something to the effect of, I don't like these contracts written on the back of a napkin. And I say, those are the only contracts we can be doing right now. When you're in an emergency, you write it on the back of a napkin and you keep moving. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Is I actually disagree strongly with that position. We cannot have perfection be the enemy of good. So she has kind of staked out a housing first, in my opinion, absolutist position. There was the domicile unknown report released recently, just a few months ago, showing that the latest data indicated that 49% of people that died on the streets, homeless people that died in a way that was related to meth use. So almost half of the homeless deaths relate to meth. And to ignore this massive drug crisis, and it needs to be declared an emergency, although even declaring something an emergency doesn't seem to garner much action or critical action, but it is an emergency dealing with the drug crisis, the meth, especially meth crisis, and even heroin. I saw it in criminal defense. I saw it when I was dealing with criminal defendants. So many of them are on drugs and homeless and failing to appear to their court appointments, getting failure to appear, warrants out for their arrests, a bail is huge. I mean, these are problems that I've been dealing with. But at the core of it, Kafori just has been almost exclusively focused on long-term solutions, affordable housing. And while I think that that's fine and needs to continue happening, we have to do something right now. And unfortunately, a lot of the commissioners underneath her fall in line. When Sharon tried to push for a short-term Safe Rest Village expansion, just last year, I believe it was, she was shot down by all of the other commissioners. So that really makes even Lori Stegman and Jessica Vega Peterson, the other two commissioners running against her, inconsistent if they're saying that they want short-term solutions when they've even thwarted Sharon from her short-term solutions. But even Sharon has had problems as well. She wasn't fully committed to flipping the Wapato jail into Bybee Lake's shelter, into a homeless shelter, essentially. Didn't think it was feasible, didn't think it could be done. The county wasted $58 million on buying a jail that they thought could turn into a shelter. They didn't finish the project. And then Jordan Schnitzer and Harsh Developments, I believe, they came in and with the help of Betsy Johnson, actually helped flip this place for just, or that place for just a fraction of the money, about $5 million, I believe it was, instead of the 58 million that the county had wasted. So it shows that when you work with the private sector, when you collaborate together, when you work with developers, you can actually get more done. And we didn't see that at the county level from Chair Kafori whatsoever.
Wow.
Is there anything that can be done though, as far as the drug abuse? Because it seems to me that even if somebody does have shelter, that's a separate problem. And if they're addicted to drugs, then you actually need to address that as well.
Absolutely. So, and I'm just going to jump into that question before I turn back to the other questions. Thank you, Diana. You're right. That's why I push for a sanitation shelter treatment first policy. It's similar to what's used in Amsterdam, not exactly the same, but basically the first thing is to get people off the streets and into sanitary conditions with toilets, showers, hygiene services, ideally a bed, although there will be sanctioned camp areas for people who want that and who choose that. And from there, the ones who have severe mental health issues and drug substance abuse disorder issues, the ones that are dangerous to themselves or others who are just completely out of it. You guys have seen it. You walk down the streets, you drive around, and you see people who just clearly are not fit to be taking care of their basic needs. They need to be civilly committed, which means they need to be transported to a hospital with clinicians and law enforcement working together, which is what Project Respond already does at the county level. Many of you have never even heard of this group. They're already doing this work. They need more funding, in my opinion. They should be funded more. You have a dispatch of a clinician, like a psychiatrist, somebody who actually knows what they're doing. They assess, is this person in a mental health crisis? Are they having substance abuse disorder symptoms? If yes, take them to the hospital to receive treatment for a few days. A judge reviews the case, and if it's decided that this person is a danger to themselves or to others, they have to go into mandatory treatment. And I think I'm the only candidate saying that that must happen. We're not going to deal with this problem otherwise. I have dealt with civil commitment cases. I have seen that side of it, and I've seen the side of what happens when people don't get treatment. And what happens is this: somebody who has a severe mental health issues or substance abuse issues gets put into a home and they burn it down. Not even on purpose, maybe on accident. They forgot that the oven's on, they're cooking something, or they do it on purpose. They think that the world's going to end. They have a paranoid thought. These are things that actually happen, and nobody is giving me answers as to how you deal with property destruction. How do you deal with them harming themselves? They need treatment. And for everybody else that's not, essentially forced to go to treatment, we call it involuntary, but I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's forced treatment for people that are dangerous. These people, otherwise could end up in jail. For everyone else, we need to create voluntary options of dual diagnosis resource centers, which means you get treatment for substance abuse and mental health at the same time. Usually they're siphoned off, which makes it a lot harder to get help. My opinion is we should have universal mental health care. I think it should be free. I would love a world where everyone can get mental health treatment because nobody can abuse that. It pays back in dividends. It's such a huge issue. I would love to see it free, fast, cheap, just like fast food. You want to get help, you get it fast, easy, before it becomes a huge problem and costs us millions and millions of dollars to deal with. So that is part of the plan that I have in place.
Yeah. Well, I love all those ideas. Vicki, do you have another question you want to go through, or?
Yeah, so let's dive into Metro. Can you tell us how Metro relates to everything with the county and the city, and maybe what could happen differently if you became chair between like communication and planning between all these entities?
Sure. And here's what I'm hoping to do is maybe I'll get through these list of questions quickly and I'll just hit on all of them and then kind of open it up to the rest of the folks. Unless somebody really needs to ask a question or has to leave, then go ahead and just chime right in because I don't want you to lose your opportunity. But I'll try to move quickly through these. So the Metro is its own thing. It works in the Tri-County area, which is Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County, really focused on land use, transportation type issues in the area. And so how would there be communication and planning? I mean, again, this goes back to collaboration. So Metro helps with the homeless issue, the homelessness crisis that we're dealing with. They can garner funding for it. And in fact, Metro, I think, has about $40 million that will be given to the county to address the homeless issue. And so there is a collaborative effort with the housing bonds, with Metro, with the county, and even at the city level to deal with the homeless crisis through the JOHS, the Joint Office of Homeless Services, which is city and county, and Metro separately from that is its own entity dealing with land use type issues and also addressing some of the homeless crisis and garnering funds for that as well, which can then go to the county as well. They also push for policies like there can be taxes, there can be different ways of funding the homeless emergency. I primarily do not believe in raising any taxes on anything ever unless we see results first. And this is really the same standard that it should apply to everyone and to the government is show us results, show us that you're improving the situation before you ask for more, and show us results that are significant. If you are not showing us the results, we're seeing that you're irresponsible with the money, that you wasted $58 million on a failed project. Don't come back to us and ask for more until you learn how to be fiscally responsible, essentially. Otherwise, you're hurting the taxpayers the most, and those taxpayers need to keep those dollars in their pockets to take care of themselves. I really strongly believe that most taxpayers know how to better spend money to support themselves oftentimes than the government ends up wasting it supposedly on their behalf. So it's just unfortunate that that's where we're at. But I almost think that at this point, with so much money that's going into failed abysmal programs, that if we just kind of gave that money back to the people or didn't take it in the first place, however you want to view it, it's kind of funny. The liberals, some of them will push for universal basic income to give you a stipend each month. And most of the conservatives are saying we don't like taxes, but at the end of the day, they want the same thing. They want the money to stay in their pocket. They want the government not to take all that money and waste it. If the government were spending the money properly and showing us great results, nobody would be complaining about taxes. No one. We would say, here, take our money, make the roads gold. Fine, you're spending it in an amazing way, but we're not seeing that. Maybe that goes to point 3, actually. I just looked at question 3, which is about taxpayers.
Yeah.
Can I just go right into that?
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so that one is, what can you say to a taxpayer in our community that would tell them, I see you? What I just said, I see you. I know a lot of people are struggling right now. We have massive inflation. We have huge gas prices. I'm about to, I don't think my family knows this, but I'm going to say this, a surprise. I have a motorcycle now, and I'm about to, I'm about to switch to riding my motorcycle at this point. And because gas is so expensive and I wasn't fully prepared to do that. Yeah, survive long enough, wear your helmet, be safe. But yeah, the gas prices are insane right now. The inflation, the cost of living, the skyrocketing rent. So when I say I see you, I say it from a place of understanding. I did not grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. A lot of people don't know this, that my family, my father was in the military. He was going through that. He had to go through school when we were kids. My mom, was a florist for a while. We made it through, food stamps, welfare. We did what we had to do to survive. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in being on food stamps. There's no shame in needing government help. But what I think there is a problem with is when people are not moving in the direction of self-sustenance, if they are able to. If you're not able to, that's a different story. We help those people. But if you are, we should be helping people become financially independent and be able to take care of themselves and give them that sense of pride and ownership over their own lives and over their own living situations. So when I say I see you, I say it from a point of understanding of somebody who has struggled, who has, I went to Stanford, I went to Georgetown, I went to the top schools, I got the best grades, I finished Stanford at 20. I have accolades underneath me. I've written a book, I've been on Fox, I've been on C-SPAN, I've been to Cato, I have done, I've been continuing legal education series on panels. I have taught other lawyers about this stuff. I'm a law professor, all this at age 30. That's not to brag, but it's to show that I have pushed really hard to improve my life, and I want other people to get the best out of their life. And if that means, keeping money in their pockets so they can make their situation better for themselves, it means that. But at the end of the day, what we want here in this region, in Oregon, I think what everybody wants is they want clean roads, clean streets, clean parks. They want a sense of community. They want art. They want music. They want not this isolated, divisive people fighting and arguing all the time and assuming the worst of each other. So I am trying to bring people together. And I'm proud that in my campaign, we do have, in my opinion, tempered, reasonable Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents. I'm usually an independent. I'm a Democrat right now. just folks that are willing to work together on common sense solutions. And that is pretty rare in this region to have that. So I'm going to go through just a few others quickly because I want to start answering the other questions. How will we know that you're doing what you said you wanted to do? Because I will be transparent. That's one of the first things on my 5-step plan to address the livability issues is statistics, which and progress reports and goalposts and accountability. So I would periodically be checking in, letting people know what's happening. And if there's a problem, right? It's not the end of the world if the government doesn't deliver on a promise or on their goal. It's just that they need to make it clear what went wrong, what they're going to do differently, where we're going to get the money, and just letting people know so they're not in the dark. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, look at this town hall right now. How does government work? What's going on? It should be very simple. It should be on one web page. If I'm county chair, I'm going to put this all on one page where you have all the links, all the access in one spot. Oh, there's a town hall coming up. It's right there. What the heck is a county chair? What is a commissioner? I really want to make it crystal clear to people. I am a teacher. I am a law professor. And what we do is we translate legalese, complex legal language, into layman's terms because people don't have time to be researching all this. So I want to do that as county chair. I want you to feel confident that if you wanted to run for county chair yourself or to be a commissioner, that you would know how to do it. I had no idea how to do this until I just jumped right in. What's C&D system? What's a treasurer? What's the Secretary of State filing? What's all this stuff? It's complicated. And I want to make it as accessible to the average person as possible because I know you're busy working and putting food on the table and you don't have the luxury of sitting around, you know, reading research papers on the government. You just don't. So hopefully this is helping you guys. How will you rally support from the other county commissioners? I think I can work with Sharon Myron. I actually like her as a person. I think she has made some efforts, not enough. She's also not committed to, in my opinion, I don't think she's openly said that she would add any armed police officers to the police force. And while I do have huge problems with the police force, and I do think we need transparency, accountability, reform, and to really have tough conversations about police misconduct around mental health responses, which is why I have a mental health response plan. We do need a functioning police force and we do need functioning law enforcement. And I do think we can move a lot of officers away from an adversarial or kind of violence first approach, particularly when dealing with unarmed people. But when we are dealing with very dangerous and violent people, we need somebody who is trained in detaining those folks. And we do have a problem with exploding gun violence and crime in this region. And that does require law enforcement response. So I would work with her. I also think Cecilia would be a good one. She's not running for chair. She's running for re-election. If you guys remember, there's 4 commissioners left after Kafori retires. 3 of them are running against me. One of them is just running for re-election in her district. And I should mention these 4 commissioners represent districts in Multnomah County, which are basically certain quadrants in Multnomah County. So, you know, District 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a commissioner who comes from each region and is elected in that region, but the commissioner chair covers the whole region and is voted by everyone in that region. You can be any political party and vote for the chair, and you can be any part of Multnomah County and vote for the chair. So I would try to work with Sharon and Cecilia and also Lori. I think once the chair sets the tone, it's more likely that you'll get more support from the commissioners from what I've heard about how the commission works. What are the first actions you will take within your first 100 days of office? Very first thing I'm going to do is create sanctioned camp areas for people to move off of the streets. And I feel like that can happen within 100 days. I can't guarantee it, but that would be the first thing I would be doing 3-4 months is find the lots. And by the way, I have a list of these public lots, transform them. And really, it's not really much to do. It's just make them sanctioned camp areas, which by the way, a lot of the homeless folks on the streets want to continue camping, but in an area that is suitable for them. They're not actually really at odds from my conversations with them with this sort of this approach. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You move them to sanctioned camp areas, you give them access to toilets, showers, laundry services, and so on, and garbage removal. Well, what if you don't have plumbing? Think of plan B, think of plan C, put porta potties there, get the showers on wheels. We have mobile showers now that can come by a couple times a week, give them showers, laundry services. Everything should be done mobile, or if there's plumbing, do it with plumbing until we make the plan better. But the goal is get people into designated areas so they can be at a fixed address. And from there, here's the biggest benefit that nobody else is talking about. They can then get on Social Security disability benefits if they have a severe impairment, a mental health issue, or a physical issue where they can't work. We should not be picking up the tab for that. The feds should. The federal government needs to be paying their way. with this massive crisis that we're absorbing here in Oregon and in Multnomah County. We are absorbing more of the homeless crisis than the rest of the nation. We have the second highest unsheltered population in the US. I want to get this into people's brains. The second highest after California per capita, not just in general, per capita, which means we're dealing with more of the problem. And so we have to get these people into designated areas, get them onto Social Security benefits if they're eligible, give them a source of income and rehabilitate the rest, and have them move up from there into tiny homes, RV parks, rest villages. Some of them can go straight to the rest village or straight to the RV park, but a lot of them don't want to do that. And you have to get them to move up the chain. And so it's a ladder until they get into independent housing. Yes.
Any question?
Yes, go ahead.
And this is a theme, and it speaks to what you just talked about, and I think it's important. And it's the idea of fragmentation, right, between agencies, departments, right? And we just heard this recently with Mayor Wheeler, just like stepping in, it seemed like, and saying, well, one agency didn't want to let them use their lot for this sort of thing, right? And he said, well, I'm going to, basically, call it eminent domain, right? So how do we, that seems so ridiculous to me. How do we break through that nonsense and say, look, we're all working towards one goal. We can't have different agencies. I don't care if you're the Parks Department or you're this, that, or the other thing. We can't have anyone saying, well, no, you can't use, essentially, you can't use my yard for this. It's NIMBY, right? The NIMBY thing between agencies that all ostensibly fall under, our government.
Good question. So those who don't know what eminent domain is, it's basically when the government forcibly takes land and then pays you for it because they need it for a really urgent reason. That's the very gist of it. It does bring in constitutional concerns, especially if you're dealing with private parties. And I will almost always push against eminent domain of private property that private citizens have. I don't think you have to remember under constitutional law, little lesson, you have to use the least restrictive means necessary. To me, the least restrictive means is not forcibly taking land from private homeowners or private landlords right now. We're not at that point. When it comes to public property that we have, I do think we need to identify county public property lots first. And I have a list of about 60 lots that are in Portland and county level. I don't know if I was supposed to have this list, but I have it, you guys. And there, and they even tell you, somebody I think leaked it to me, and I won't say her name, but they have, some of them have plumbing, some of them do not. And I say we just use those ones. I don't know what the, we don't need to go into this eminent domain. Maybe 60 lots is not enough. Maybe they're not all great location. Maybe half of them are. Still start with that and start getting people off. If you had 30 lots that were eligible for the sanctioned camping, 100 people per lot, that's already 3,000 people moved off from on the street, on the side of the street camping into designated areas with hygiene. So I would start there. I wouldn't go into the eminent domain yet until it becomes absolutely necessary, even for other public property that's out there. We should focus on the county and city lots and have ideally the Joint Office of Homeless Services supporting this movement as well. Doing it voluntarily is ideal. Trying to say, hey, people on the streets, we have these lots for you. Please move there. You have this amount of time. You have a month to get into one of these lots that's closest to you, that's most convenient for you. However it works, we'll work out those details later, but we need to identify and convert those lots immediately. I mean, day one, you get into the office, that's the first thing you're thinking about.
If I may, I don't mean to be hogging the microphone here, but
Sure.
and I agree with you. My point was not, hey, let's execute eminent domain and take over anyone's property. No, but my point was more about the fragmentation between the different departments, right? So how do you breach that gap when you have, you're in office, okay, let's say, and then all of a sudden somebody from whatever department says, nah, I'm not gonna play. I'm not gonna, be a good member of the team, right?
That's a great question. I will have to be honest. I don't think I can solve that. And I don't know that I could. I would try my best to use my arguing power and my lawyer powers to do that. But at the end of the day, I'm one person in this massive machine, and I'm doing everything I can within the power that I would have to make the biggest change possible. I don't know, like, for example, ODOT. here's something that you guys may be aware of. The people that are on the highway camping out there, that's largely in ODOT's domain. So if ODOT doesn't want to deal with it, there starts to be red tape around who can go in and start dealing with it if it's on the highway. And if they just say, no, it's a hands off, that's actually Kate Brown's responsibility. That's Governor Brown. If Governor Brown is basically saying, I won't direct ODOT to deal with this problem, then we are having silos and we're having problems. The only thing I can promise is that I would be transparent with the people and start pointing to where those problems are coming from. And you as the people and myself as a constituent, we have to start voting in consistent leadership that is committed to solving these problems. That means immediately when you're looking at the ballot coming up this May, vote in people who have said, I will support. I've already talked to the auditor running Brian. I said, would you deal with this? I'm asking other candidates, like, will you commit to supporting these ideas and these plans? And if they're not supporting it, don't vote for those people. Don't allow them to be in elected positions any longer because they can thwart the efforts of other local government agencies, which is a problem. Can I briefly touch on this last question or so and then open it up?
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's some on the side. I'm going to try to get through them by 6:30. What is the first action you will take in the first 100 days? I just said that. And then somebody said, what are the top 2 things you want to accomplish in your 4 years? Again, making a huge dent in the homeless crisis. I will not promise that everyone will be off the streets, but I want it to be something where people are getting help, people are getting treatment, people are moving up that social mobility ladder, and we're not seeing the visible livability issues, because there have been studies on this. When you see poverty, when you see crime, when you see this, it creates a tension and stress. And of course it does, because we want to feel like we're thriving and not like we're getting into a deplorable situation. And we want to help people reach their full potential. So first, the 2 things I would really like to see is a huge dent in the homeless crisis. And the second thing, which I have not mentioned, is anti-isolation efforts post-COVID. As we come out of this pandemic, a lot of people are having mental health issues. They've been anxious, they've been lonely, they've been disconnected from other people for a long time. And as you come out, I really want to bring back a sense of community. I want to have more jazz in the park. You know, we used to have more of that blues in the park, and not just blues and jazz. I don't really like blues and jazz, but music in the park, people performing, local artists coming together, people paint, for example, at these safe rest villages. Let's get local artists to come together and decorate these safe rest homes so they look more beautiful. Like, we need beauty in this county. So the second thing I want to see is beauty again, roses. And my little logo on my campaign is a rose, because we are, you know, Portland is the city of roses. It doesn't look so rosy right now. It's not looking rosy. So to me, my second plan is make it rosier, make it more beautiful, give people a sense of community, bring us together in healing as we come out of the pandemic, celebrate together, have festivities together. We really, when we didn't have those holidays and July 4th events and all those things we used to do, I love the July 4th event downtown. You start to lose that sense of community, and you go inwards and you become more divisive. So I want to push back against that and say, let's come together in healing. And that's hard even for me to do. You know, sometimes there's people, I don't like your view. I don't like that you're, you know, you think this. And I say, we can't be doing that any longer. We're too hurt. We're too broken. We can't do that. Stop attacking each other, come together, work together. Last question was, would you consider a thorough review of the county budget and make recommendations public based off of that review about what the county could be doing better and spending better, and some questions about budget accountability, and easy ways to digest that. So there's just a lot about accountability and budgeting. Yes, I mean, accountability is at the top of my campaign. And another thing I would really like to see modeled in my in office is digital democracy. This idea that you can access democracy and politics online in an easy to digest, simple way, not complicated, not going through 15 different web pages, not having to go all over the place to know what's going on. I want to have a central portal from the Multnomah County website, and it could be just my page where everything is made clear, crystal clear, with an overview of budgeting issues, when we're having obstacles, frequent updates, town halls or state of the county addresses. I would have state of the county addresses. I would have them regularly, and they would be made public, and I would invite everyone, so everyone's voice is heard, to come in. Houseless advocate. I want the homeless advocates there. I want the homeless there, but I want the house people there. I want the business owners there. I want the landlords there too. Everybody deserves a voice. We need to hear all the voices. So yes, would I support a thorough review of the county budget? I don't know that I would say I would support a thorough review. That's what the auditor is supposed to be doing, is auditing and creating the budget. That's their role. So I don't know that I would be stepping on their toes, but I would be, if there are problems, looking more closely at our progress reports and letting you know when we are meeting goals and when we are not meeting goals. And here's one thing that I think would be really cool, and I might even poll the rest of the room. What would you guys think about this? Let's say the commissioners are arguing and bickering, and they have their Thursday meeting and their council meetings, and nobody knows what's going on in that. Who knows what's going on? You have to go to a Zoom meeting, and if you miss it, oh well, okay, I guess maybe look at some, look online. But here's my question. And this is to you guys, everyone can just write on the side over here, and then I'll answer the rest of the questions. If the commissioners are stuck, they're arguing, they can't agree on things, nothing is passing, and somebody's saying, I want housing first, and somebody's saying, I want temporary shelter and sanitation, I think we should open it up to a public poll. And I'm not saying the poll will be definitive or that will be the answer, but what you do is you let one commissioner put their policy proposal forth saying, this is how much it's going to cost, here's where the money is going to come from, and here's how fast we can do it, and here are the ways that we're going to do it. We're going to get this construction agency to develop in this area in this amount of time, and we will move this many people off the street. Literal exact plans and blueprints versus shelter and sanitation first, treatment. Here's my plan. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how fast I can do it. And then let the people weigh in and just say, oh, you know what? We think housing first is okay, even though it requires another tax. I'll support that versus I don't want another tax. I'm going to go with shelter first. And I don't think we can pour more money into this until we start getting people into preliminary, treatment and sanitary other areas. And so they can move up the ladder. What do you guys think of that? Like a public poll where you guys periodically can just jump right in, give your opinion quickly, look at the proposals, just literally one sheet here. Which one do you guys like? Okay, because that's where I'm leaning towards, is when you're stuck and you're bickering, and you should engage the people. You should ask the people, which one do you support? And if one requires more taxes, put it out to the people before you pass it, or before you start moving in that direction and starting a project before you have all the money for it. You need to know what the budget is and you need to work within it. So that's kind of on that last point. And it shouldn't be these budget PDFs, these long PDFs. It should be more exciting and engaging. Polls, surveys, live streams, live feeds, ways that you can just kind of come into the portal and engage with other people, in a civic way, in a civil way, a civic minded way, and just talk to other folks and know what's going on. Yeah, it looks like everybody would like that. I have some questions on the side that hopefully I can go through, because some are asking in here. I'll try to get them. There's so many, and I love that you guys are asking questions. Let me see. I'm going to go all the way up. How am I going to deal with Mike Schmidt? I have no idea. I've tried to reach out to him and he hasn't responded. So who knows? But here's what I will say is I am always open to having conversations when it comes to criminal defense and prosecution, because I worked in criminal defense and I also worked in criminal appeals for the state. So I've seen both sides of it. I helped uphold appeals at the state level, people that were appealing their criminal convictions. I said, nope, you need to stay in prison. But I've also gotten people out of prison. And so I really have seen both sides of things. And I feel like we need somebody who understands the prison side, the prisoner side, the criminal defense side, the prosecution side. I have that background, and I am open to Mike Schmidt talking to me and talking with me through the problems that he's facing. But I will say that I'm not incredibly thrilled with the leadership coming out of the DA's office. Let's see. Oh, thank you. I use the word mandatory. Yes. Blah, 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 going through. What legal tools do we have to require that people move into shelters? Well, like I said, hopefully it's voluntary. And I think for a large chunk, I asked one woman on the street who camps on the highway, how many she thinks would go into the sanctioned camp instead of other options like tiny homes and shelters. She said about 40%. So if that's the case, start focusing on those folks. Get the ones who are fine with going to the sanctioned camps in there first. The most immediate action. I don't think we need enforcement, but at some point when there are alternatives available and people still refuse to use the alternatives, especially when there's multiple alternatives and they say, no, I want only housing first. Yes, you need to enforce. That's the Martin v. Boise case. That's the Ninth Circuit ruling that basically says you can't move people off the streets unless there's an adequate alternative like a shelter bed. Well, a lot of people don't like the shelter beds, and I can see why. But for some people it works. And when you have all these different options and you still say no, then yes, you would have to have enforcement. You would basically sweep the area like the sweeps we normally have. And then you would say, here's your notice. You can go to this one of these camps or a safe rest village or a shelter. And I really do try to provide multiple options because everyone has different needs. They're not all the same out there. But when you have multiple options, if somebody is still insisting it's my right to be out here and privatize public space to the exclusion of other people, we start to have a problem. And I do think that at that point you would need to enforce, but I would try to work with people and work from where they're at before I get to that point. But it would have to be an option on the table, because laws without enforcement are just recommendations. Let's see, how many people would you think each designated camp could house? That's hard for me to say. It really depends on the lot, how you split it up, if it can have quadrants in it. I just threw 100 out. I do think it shouldn't be like 1,000, like Ted Wheeler tried to push for. That's just not feasible to have the right amount of staffing and security. And the issues, I think, would start to explode if you had too many people in one spot. That just seems like common sense to me. And I am focused on common sense, maybe closer to the 50 to 100 range for each one of these. And so we really just use all these lots. But just remember, as we have these lots, let's say there's 3,000 people out of all these lots that we have total. And at some point they should be moving up the ladder. So it's not like they're just there indefinitely forever. The goal is to keep moving them up the ladder into affordable housing and permanent housing. And for those who are severely mentally ill or on drugs, you get them into treatment and eventually try to rehabilitate. Some people will never be rehabilitated. So just know that we will just have to foot the bill, pay for their treatment, put them in a resource center, and just kind of move on from that. But some people just can't be rehabilitated. And that's an unfortunate reality that we have to acknowledge. And I think society needs to pay for that. Yeah, it's sad. Yes.
May I step in a second?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so, and listen, everything you're saying is very important, and I appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
Thank you.
But what I'd like to do is not so much get into the weeds of your policies, because trust me, there'll be time for that, right? We're gonna get you into office, and you're gonna tell us all about the policies, right? And we're gonna work through that. So I'd like to step back a second and say, we'll ask you a couple things. One, since we're all here and we're spending our Friday evening, how can we help you get into office? How do we do that? What can we actually do? Right? We all leave here right now and we say, hey, we like this candidate. How do we help you?
Great question. First thing you can do is just put your email in the chat box, and you can do it privately to Blaine, I think, or is Blaine not here anymore? He might have left. Who else do I have? Maybe I'm going to ask somebody.
You can send it to me.
Alex, thank you. If everybody,
Yes.
You can do it as a direct message or as if you don't mind other people seeing it. If you just type your email into that, and please, when you get an email from the campaign, just make sure you read it and engage and respond. We try not to spam, but what we do is you can canvas. That's the number one thing. We just got amazing flyers. I should have grabbed one. It's in the car. I have 5,000 of them right now. We have amazing flyers. We have bumper stickers. We have promotional material pretty much to promote the name of the campaign. And we really just need people going out there and leaving these on people's doorsteps. We don't really want you to knock on doors and talk unless you have somebody with you, just because of safety issues. I'm aware of that. But if you're able to just go door to door, drop off the flyer, because quite frankly, I fundraised maybe around $15,000, which I think is pretty good for these small donations I've been getting, which I'm very grateful for. 10, 20 bucks. It adds up over time. But my competitors have 70,000, 80,000, right? They have more. One of them has about 30,000. So I'm maybe anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 times outraised by my opponents, but still in the running and still very formidable in terms of fundraising right now, where if we have the manpower and woman power to get this done, we can compensate for postage. Postage is expensive to reach 100,000 people. Think how much a stamp costs. But if we have people going door to door, we can make up for that with sweat equity. And I really am running this grassroots. I mean, this is so grassroots. We're probably at the core of the earth right now. So, coming up, yes, put your email in there, please.
One thing to mention is if you just want to receive newsletters and are not interested in getting involved further, please note that when you send your email to me, because we definitely need people going out, knocking on doors, or even just commenting online and spreading the name and sending me an email. I'll get you in touch with the other volunteers and get you on the mailing list so you can know when town halls are coming up, news from the campaign, stuff like that. But we'll keep that communication not overwhelming. Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Alex.
just want to say something, Terry. I disagree a little bit with you. I would like to get in the weeds, and the reason is because I have been very hopeful about your campaign,
Thank you.
and I am talking to people online, and I get questions in the weeds, and there's a lot of distrust. Most people don't believe that anybody is going to do anything different, and
Yeah.
so the things in the weeds, like how can we civilly commit the mentally ill? What legal options do we have? So I'm pleased at your campaign even talking about requiring people to move off the streets. That's a good first step.
Thank you.
But and it sounds like, you know, you'll be trying to get people's cooperation at first, which is a very good idea. But I think with the lack of trust that everyone in Portland has, including myself,
Yeah.
I want to hear in the weeds what power you have and what power you would use if necessary, because our current batch of politicians refuse to use their power or coalesce people together to really work on things.
Great question. So I am going to go into the weeds just a little bit. That was maybe an aside. Thank you for anyone who can participate. I would love it. I would appreciate any support. I'm fighting so hard. I'm working as much as I can every moment. I still have a day job. I still have bills to pay. I am not in government right now. So please keep that in mind. I'm like you guys, I'm a constituent. I'm running because I got fed up. Now your question, Deborah, I see it over here, was about the phone calls and how do we get these things done. Before I answer that, I just want to draw attention to this. There is a lot of distrust. I'm distrusting. That's why I'm running. But I want to remind people that my three competitors who are current county commissioners literally have been in a position where they could have effectuated change. And they keep saying, we're gonna deal with the issue. All three of them are saying the same thing. We're gonna deal with the issue. But why is it that you guys cannot agree on a solution? It has been over 5 years for each of them. So I ask you, will you give a promotion to somebody who has a tried record of failing for 5+ years, or at least give somebody else a chance? That's just my first point. I have a record of achieving things, getting things done really fast, high energy, young. I'm doing this. We need fresh blood. We need new ideas. And so part of it is, let's get fresh momentum into the political paralysis we're in right now. That's number one. Now, why trust me as opposed to them? That's one of the hugest reasons, is I haven't failed. But number two is I actually have plans that I can deliver. And I have explained a lot of the sort of obstacles in the way. And I'm not promising perfection. I will never promise that. I do not like to overpromise and say, oh, I'll get all the people off the street in 6 months. No. But what I can promise is I will be working with critical urgency to channel the anger and frustration of the average constituent. And I really hope it's the average constituent. And we're about to find out in these ballots, because I wrote my voter blurb very candidly about my frustration with this area. So that means convincing. I'm a lawyer. This is what I do for a living. Convincing the people on the board, which is why I have to be so careful about attacking my opponents. But I do think their policies are up for grabs, not them as people. I will never attack them as people, but in terms of their policy positions and their leadership, I have attacked it. But I also want to work with them, especially Sharon and I think Sushila. And once we have those three, and maybe Lori, again, not clear yet, but once you have just 3 people on board, and if you already have 2, it's only 1 more person, we can actually start this change. So is there a possibility that I'm stopped, that all 3 commissioners hate me and won't support me? There's a chance, but the alternative is we have a guarantee of not seeing progress, essentially. I mean, it's almost a guarantee at this point, because we've already seen what people have delivered. So I would be working to collaborate. Look at my campaign right now: Republicans, Democrats, independents, moderates, libertarians. We're working together right now. I think this is modeling the idea of we can get things done if we just focus on bringing the floor up. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. I say this over and over. This theoretical perfection and this absolutism is the problem, and it needs to be rooted out in every part of our government. But I will be pushing as hard as I can to channel what the average people have been saying over and over and over again and have not been heard. As to your point about the phone number into the sanctioned camps, that's an interesting one. I actually haven't thought of that. What I do know is that there's a current reporting of encampments, and you can look online at the maps where they show all of the encampments. I would probably focus first on the encampments because they're big and they create more biohazards, and making sure that those are dealt with first. And then kind of moving from there, like a report line. where you would report the encampments and there would actually be action. Well, we already have that process, but it's not moving fast enough and it's not actually dealing with it. People have reported camps and then 5 months later, nothing has happened. And the government will come out and say, oh, we're working on it. And this actually just happened recently. We're working on it. And then the reporter came back and said, well, what's your plan? They kept kind of like pushing them off. And finally, the city said, we haven't even begun to start a plan. Only after they were questioned multiple times in a row did they admit that they were just stringing everyone along and kicking the can down the road. And that is exactly what I want to root out. If somebody reports a camp and it has high risk, especially if it has high risk, there's drugs, there's syringes, there's violent activity, those ones need to be the first ones that are being addressed. And some people need to get arrested. If you are committing violent crimes, you need to get arrested. If you are harassing your neighbors, you need to get arrested. Nobody is above the law. And that's the other thing that I'm willing to say. Some people, not just on the streets, but just in general, they need to be in jail and they're not in there right now. So that's another thing, like reporting crimes and reporting mental health crises. And by the way, you can actually report mental health crises to Project Respond. They have a number and they do actually come out fairly quickly and respond to mental health crises. So if the police are not dealing with something, please look into Project Respond as an alternative. Most people don't know about that. So that's that. Let me go quickly through this last one. Is there some way to rescind this as voters? The city of Portland took over the land ODOT owns within city limits. I'm not sure about that, although I don't know that I would agree with that, because once you take it out of the city limits, I mean, who's doing a worse job? The state or the city of Portland? I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like either one of them have done a good job, or the county. I just feel like all across the board, they're failing. But at least if it's in the Portland jurisdiction, then you could be dealing with the homeless crisis all in one big swoop instead of having to have these silos again. Oh, I got to get ODOT permission. So maybe there's a benefit of keeping it that way. I wouldn't be so sure. Are you in favor of listing every homeless person in progress report on each individual? Probably not in that sort of way, like a individualized one. I would be looking at the total numbers. So JOHS tells us how many people they get off the street, but we don't have periodic updates on how many stay off the streets. So it may look better than what's actually happening. Somebody gets off the street for a week, but they're back on the street again, but that doesn't reflect it in the report. So I would say we need periodic reports on the totality of each sanctioned area and each shelter, tiny home village, RV park, whatever it is. We need to be keeping tabs on how many people are in here, how many are moving out. And yes, at each individual place, there needs to be an itemized list of the people, and every person, you need a head count. Yes, I don't think that should be made public or even with anonymized information. I don't know that we would need that much detail, but we do need the numbers given to the people. How many people are taken off the street? How many people are still there? Are they staying there 6 months later? And how many are moving on to independent housing? Are they getting jobs? Are they, because ideally we don't have these people living there forever. Eventually they move up the chain and they become sufficient. That's the goal.
Well, that's my question. If we could get a handle on how many people are capable of surviving on their own, or how many people, just like you said, are lost.
Well, this is the unfortunate reality. I attended the town hall with Sharon Meyerin, and I believe it was Alan Evans, who works at Bybee Lakes with Helping Hands. He said 52% of the polled homeless have admitted to substance abuse issues and alcohol issues. So that probably means the majority they need treatment, and whether they can be rehabilitated, who knows, but about maybe half of them could probably be helped with not significant amount of resources, and another half probably needs significant amount of resources, just based on the preliminary numbers I've been looking at. And quite frankly, out of the other half who don't have substance abuse issues, they might have mental health issues, right? The numbers range, but 52% is probably the bare minimum of the ones that really need extra help.
And one of the problems is too, that you can't necessarily identify people or keep track of them. It's almost impossible nowadays with the computing power to anonymize personal data. And I'm a privacy, cybersecurity, and data lawyer, so I can tell you that
cybersecurity and
that is a problem. Trying to identify people and keeping lists. So that's, but it's difficult. It'd be great if you could do it.
Yeah, I do try to stay away from that for that reason, just because I am a privacy rights professor. So there are concerns about that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it might cost a lot of money. That's not worth it to do it that way. I would rather just have the total statistics. By the way, there is a tri-county effort right now happening to centralize the homeless data, which I think is great. So Washington County, Clackamas County and Multnomah County are creating a software system to keep track of numbers, not to the degree of that specificity, but because the problem is now pouring into the surrounding counties, which is why I have people supporting me in Washington and Clackamas County too, because I am aware I do not want our problem to infect other areas and become a bigger problem. We need to contain our problem. And so absolutely, I do think we need better numbers. I don't know that I would do it where it's individualized in that way. If I could just stay for a couple more minutes, I'm going to wrap up the final questions and then hopefully wrap up if you guys don't mind. Somebody else asked, does having an address help qualify those with mental illness to receive federal aid? It helps them get on SSDI. Yes, you cannot get on Social Security disability benefits. I do this for a living. I help people with Social Security issues, with unemployment issues, people with disabilities, and you cannot get on SSDI unless you have a fixed address, which is all. But here's the thing, under the federal laws, a homeless organization can sponsor the homeless person and use their address instead. So it can go to the homeless shelter instead of actually having your own permanent housing. And that would at least help people. You could have case managers, and this would be huge to me, get them on SSDI. At the town hall with Sharon Myron, I believe it was Alan Evans who said it, 66% of people on the street have never been reached out by a government case management worker. That tells you something. 66% on the street, slipping through the cracks, and yet we have hundreds of nonprofits supposedly dealing with the homeless crisis. It looks like a homeless industrial complex to me. You know,
To that end, I have tried to get one of the homeless industrial complex places going to go to the 2 tents that are near me and try to offer them help. They don't answer my phone. Can we defund these nonprofits that don't call you back, don't do anything?
Well, I am talking with Join on Twitter. They like to talk with me. Luckily, they've at least been civil, I will say. Katrina has been civil with me, but they are very, very, in my opinion, housing first. And that is their goal. They are open. They seem to be very open about it. And I have also been pushed back against and basically attacked. You guys don't even want to look at my Twitter. It's so out of control. But pushed back and saying, oh, you don't think people with mental health issues and substance abuse issues deserve housing. I say, I don't care what you think they deserve. They need to be in the hospital. They need to be getting treatment. They need to be in a behavioral resource center. These people need treatment, not to go get high alone in the apartment until it burns down or there's property damage or something bad happens or they harm themselves, which is not compassionate, and it's not fair to let people be alone with their drug addiction or mental health issues and not getting any help. I don't support that. Oh, you are cutting out, Deborah. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. They get a lot of money from the county. Would the county cut them off if they don't cooperate?
I think we should be asking for periodic progress reports from all of them and auditing them very closely. And if they're not showing results, they either get their funding slashed, or if we see, hey, you're helping one group of people, but not other groups, then you keep doing just this part, but we need to use some of this money for something else. That we need a tiered approach where we're approaching the issue from all ends, because I actually don't have a problem with housing first in general. If it's only for the people who just slip through the cracks, maybe they need a rent voucher for a month or two and they're on their way. What I don't support is this indefinite, permanent situation where we are subsidizing housing for people who are perfectly healthy but refuse to get any help, or they're not healthy and they refuse to get any help. And that's not fair to the rest of the taxpayers. It's a huge taxpayer burden, and nobody's talking about cost or money here. It's going to cost too much. I'm going to answer the last question, and then maybe I'll stay if anyone else wants to talk. But what do we do about the next 2 or 3 waves of campers that are due to arrive in Portland from outside the county? It's clear at this point that many, if not most of those living in tents are not from here. And of those many, they are quite new to the city, 2 years or less. How do we dissuade individuals from taking advantage of whatever services we offer? Portland cannot be the welfare provider for large swaths of the country. Yeah, this is a huge problem. I mean, this is not going to be solved all the way until we have a federal response. At the county level, what we should be doing is not incentivizing people to come here that are not from here. And actually, if you look at London's policy, get this, London has a metro area of about 9 million people, and they count, last time I checked, only about 400 people on the streets. 9 million people, 400 on the streets. Versus here, we'll say the whole Portland metro region, 2.5 million, and probably we have about 20,000 on the streets. I mean, that's a massive scale of more homeless people on the streets. But what does London do differently? Guess what? They provide subsidized housing. They do provide help to people. But what they don't do is they do not allow that you have to be vouched for, that somebody in the community that lives there knows you. You have a family member there, you have a friend that lives there that knows you. If you don't have any connections to the area, you do not get the subsidized help. I'm not saying that that's the solution here. I don't know that it is. I don't have a perfect answer for that. But what I do know is the permissive drug culture here is what's drawing a lot of people to come here, where we decriminalize drugs, but we didn't follow up with the rehabilitation that was supposed to be part of the decriminalization. So I have heard that this is through the grapevine, this is where people come for heroin, and this is where people come for meth, to feel free to do what they want. And that does create more of a problem of people who have drug addiction issues, seeing this as a sort of staging ground for them to just kind of do that and not have any treatment or repercussions when it starts to cause antisocial behavior or affect people around them. I think we have to deal with that mental health and drug addiction